this morning, I'm chatting with, you know, this Ethiopian girl, like that's been kind of cool. She asked me for advice. Um, she's been a good resource for me, helping me with things. And so she kind of opened up and was just kind of like, saying like, she wants, a better life for herself. And, while she does, hope to find like a man that she aligns with, she's very adamant on having something of her own in a relationship or even marriage. And a lot of things she was saying was like deja vu. I'm just like, wow, you know, some of the things like, my wife at the time, said a lot. For women in general. For women in general. And so this morning she had sent me like because I had asked her, I said, okay. So I had gave her some advice. I said there are three things that you can do when it comes to one of making sure yourself is taken care of. I said you can have your own business. I said your husband can take care of you, or you could depend on a job. So I said you could depend on three things. You could depend on your own business, a man taking care of you, or our own job. And I said, which of the three would you be most comfortable with? And she said the first two. She was like, my own business or my husband taking care of me. But she was like, even if my husband takes care of me, she was like, I still want to have something of my own. So I said, okay. So deja vu again. So how I'm processing it is that, when women say that, and I'm gonna get into, some guys are gonna be like, well, what's the problem with her having things on her own? So it's not a problem, but I'm gonna address that later. But when I hear this, it says that you, it tells me that a woman is not gonna be completely happy in a relationship, even if he's doing all the right things. She's still not gonna be happy because of what she didn't accomplish on her own. She's gonna bring that into the relationship. She may have some unfair resentment towards her man, especially if she feel like he could have done something to help her accomplish her dreams. She's gonna have some resentment towards herself. Maybe she may feel like a failure or whatever the case may be. But in any event, she's gonna bring, she's gonna harbor some resentment or unhappy feelings in into the relationship, whether it's your, even if you don't have anything to do with her failures. Let's just call it what it is. You know. Um so I'm thinking about all those things. And so I told her, I said, well, send me I said, give me a list of business ideas. Because she looking at me, she's looking at me like kind of like a mentor advisor. Right. She's 22. And so so she sent me this business plan for a salon, right? And I will say this, better than my ex. 'Cause I used to want my ex to like say, if you want me to help you, like put it on paper, show me the investment, how much profit you expect to make. You know, my ex never wanted to go into that detail. She just felt like, if you my man, just like my parents, like you should, if I need $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, and you got it, you should do it out of love. But this girl, Ethiopian girl, she actually had a business. She actually had a business plan. She said she did it for school. And so so she does have a business plan. So I said, okay. So I said, what do you plan on doing I'm gonna get to some of y'all comments in a minute. I said, what do y'all plan on doing? What do you plan on doing to get the initial investment? And then she asked me this morning. She was like, would you?" She said, "Would you consider investing in that business?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's not." I said, "No, it's not my dream. That's your dream." Now, the funny thing was that when I was in Ethiopia and like we went to some off the road places, and she kind of organized like transportation and things like that. I was like, you know what, we could. I was like, we could do a. I threw an idea of having like a tour business, a tour company. You know, people that want to visit these cities. You know, there's potential to make money in that. I gave her that idea. You know, I said, you know, I would set up. Obviously, I'll be the bank behind it, but you know, you know, what I mean, I had a vision for that. So you know, it's something she wasn't interested in. That's cool. Just like with my ex, you know, I had a business idea of we could have started a foreign language school. You know, I teach English, she teach Spanish. So we had an idea, but my ex wasn't interested in. She wasn't interested in the idea. So which is cool. People are not going to be always interested in your ideas. So she brought up this salon idea, and what was deja vu was that a lot of you guys that deal with foreign chicks, when they talk about having their own business, you see them with salons or they want to open up some secondhand retail shop. And for whatever reason, I'm not gonna knock the hustle, but for whatever reason, women really strongly believe that their salon, their boutique is really gonna take off. You know, most people do think their business idea is gonna be successful, myself included. So not judging on how people believe in their business, but it's just like wow. When I hear salon and then I hear and then what comes with it is that are you going to invest? So I started thinking about all the things we were saying, and then I was, you know, I be chatting with Chat GPT because I be wanting to really go deep into a lot of things. So I started to kind of think about how foreign men, well, let's say us passport bros, are viewed should be viewed as because, like I told, like I told her, like I told my ex, is that if I invest in a business, we have to be partners. And sometimes they may be saying, okay, cool, but they're still not going to be happy. They're still going to run into the same situation if they're not going to have anything of their own. They may not say it, but internally they're going to feel like because they're going to say, okay, they looking at what you have. They be like, okay, you had a house before before we got married. You had a business before we had married. You have money and savings before we got married. So they looking at all the things that you obtained on your own, and you're coming into the marriage or relationship with things you already have. And a lot of these foreign women don't like the fact that they're coming into a serious relationship or marriage with nothing. So they want to feel like they're on a level playing field by at least having something of their own. But it's not your fault that they don't have anything on their own. And so that's the what's this that's the crux when it comes to the relationships, not necessarily women with lower with with no money, women in countries where they don't have opportunities to fulfill their potential. Um, I'm gonna get into this too. The U.S. There are women that are broke too in the U.S., but the women that are broke in the U.S. they are not void of opportunities. They have potential to get access to capital, whether it's credit. There's job opportunities if they have the skill set. And then a lot of times in America, it's just how hard you work. So it's not about a woman being broke. That's not the issue between passport bros and foreign women. It's about these foreign women believe believe that if they were in a country like the US, that they would be successful or even sometimes just as successful as you. They believe that. And the issue a lot of us passport we struggle with is that, not saying that we are right 100% of the time, but we kind of have a feel on who has the who has the talent, the skills to be successful. I think I have a pretty good eye for talent. You know, um, when I used to work in corporate setting, the CEO, the executive used to have this term like fire. A person has fire in their belly, and you could see if a person has fire in their belly. Like you could see like a person is like, okay, this person I can see this person do great things. A lot of women I've come across, I just haven't got that. You know, Either the education they have, the way they speak, the way they understand numbers and business. It's like I don't see how you could be successful in the US. I could be wrong, but I digress. So when it comes to being a man being an investor, like I said, either I have to be a partner, or if I'm loaning you the money, then it's gonna if I'm loaning you the money, because someone will be like, because even my ex said this, some woman will be like, well, I'll pay you back. And I just kind of look at my head like, you're not gonna pay me back. How can you pay me back? But let's just entertain the option of lending a woman some money, right? Assuming let's just say the relationship is long distance, or you're back and forth, right? So what I'm trying to explain to these women is that when it comes to a lender, a bank, when I get you get a loan on a mortgage or a car, right? It's easy to get a car in the US because it's easy to repossess. So a bank will loan you money to get a car easier than getting a credit card sometimes, because the bank can repossess the asset. When you get credit cards or personal loans, they don't know where that money's going to. They can't really repossess anything. That's why it's harder to get those type of credit cards or personal loans. But a car, they can repossess it. Banks have jurisdiction to repossess a car anywhere in the United States. Same thing with a mortgage. Your house is fixed. You can't move it. If you default, if you default on a mortgage, guess what? Foreclosure, they can repossess the home. So what I'm trying to what a lot of women don't understand too, because sometimes women feel like you could, okay, if I'm borrowing the money, then it shouldn't be a problem. Like, it's more than just you saying you're gonna pay me back. It's about jurisdiction and being able to basically repossess if that loan defaults. So in a long distance relationship, even a long distance transaction, I can't go to a bank in the US and say, hey, I want to buy a home in Colombia, or I want to buy a property in Ethiopia. They're not going to loan me money for that, because the banks in the US don't have jurisdiction in those countries to repossess those assets. So my point is that the lender, the bank, has to be domiciled in that jurisdiction, meaning that if I wanted to lend a woman money, I would have to be, one, living in her country. Two, the loan has to be I have to have control over the loan, in a sense that I can repossess the asset if I need to be. So that's the difficulty of, because a lot of relationships a lot of guys enter are either long distance, or even if they're living there, they may not even have the residency requirements to have certain legal protections either. You know, something equivalent to a green card. Some guys are married and don't have the equivalent to a green card. They may have permanent resident. They may have some residency where they have to renew, but they don't have the equivalency of a green card where they could enforce those things. So I'm trying to put all this in perspective. So this is why the title of the stream are called "Men Are the Bank." Foreign women need to understand this. So we are the bank. We are the bank. So when if a woman, I ain't gonna say if, most of these foreign women want to have something of their own, whether it's a home or business. Some may want help with educate, getting college or things like that. But most women want something tangible out the situation. And so, which is fine, but men, we have to understand that we are the bank and we have to operate like the bank. But the bigger challenge is that we have to figure out how to convey or get foreign women to understand that we are a bank, and they have to understand how banks work. you know, which is financial literacy. They have to understand how banks work, and or how an investor works. We know the show Shark Tank. Shark Tank doesn't give people money out the kindness of their heart. Shark Tank says, I'll invest this amount for this percentage ownership, or I want this percentage of profit. That's how financially astute people should move. We should not be making, as men, we should be making more logical decisions. We should be making more business minded decisions. Women are not going to look at things logical. They're gonna use emotional based decision. They're gonna be like, well, if you love me, or a lot of women do feel like if you don't want to support, if you don't support their dream, they feel like you don't love them. So that it takes an emotional hit on them, which is unfair to us, because it's not because we don't love, it's because we view things from a more logical, practical standpoint. And so we're dealing with, a lot of times we're not only dealing with long distance, we're dealing with just female nature, her not understanding your logical approach to finances. So all this stuff, creates creates a lot of difficulty. But we are the bank, we are investors, and we have to look at, if I'm going to give you this money, I need a stake in this company. Or if I'm going to loan you some money, it has to be, you have to understand that I need to be domiciled there before that. So, to make a long story short, you have to understand, and she has to understand that, if it's long distance, you can't loan her money, and she can't expect you to loan her money. And so she has to make a decision to say that this distance relationship, is it beneficial? And a lot of times, a lot of men have to ask themselves, is it beneficial too? Because to men, men feel like, okay, if we're not having sex, if you're not able to cook for me or whatever, clean for me, and because you're in a different country, the long distance relationship is not going to benefit me if I'm sending you money and I'm not getting nothing in return. It is what it is. You know, um, women make relationships transactional. Men do too. In a lot of ways, it's give and take. So That's the first thing. Now you can't loan a woman money if you don't have any, if you're not living there, and two, you don't have any rights to enforce default on loan payment. Now if you want to be, if you want to have stake in a company, you can legally do that far away. You could set up a equivalent to a LLC, and you can set it up where, let's say if I did a tourism business, the customers would, they would pay through my paywall, and I would kind of have control over the money side and the customer side, and she would have more control over the logistics, getting people together and things like that. So you can have more control depending on what type of business structure it is. But if she wants a salon and you a partner in a salon, you're not there to help her, to help the business become successful. Because if you're a partner, you want to make sure you give that person the tools for the business to be successful. So you're not there, and then um, it's still kind of more of her business because she has. If you're not there, because if y'all was to break up, she still has the clientele. Um, she may still have the shop, and so it's hard. It's hard to recoup. It's hard to recoup on your investments, especially if it's a salon. Let me catch up on some of these comments real quick before I continue, man. Got some few people in the building. Salute to y'all. Harvey said, "Bro, these women sound like they are getting worse now." It's the young ones too, man. I gotta. It's the young ones too. But I know it's gonna be some pushback when you talk about age. I know it's gonna be some pushback from brothers when you talk about age. He said, "I think Scandinavia might be a good option now if you can find an East African born and raised there. You might be all right." Okay, okay. He said, "But I still think Passport Bros 3.0 is a small town America." You think that's what it's gonna get back to the drawing board? Okay, I'm gonna get that. He said, "As far as I'm concerned, Rwanda is only a viable option in Africa. Having a strong man as president is probably the reason for this." That's a good point. Let's see. Rona said, "Definitely need to be partners." Exactly. Exactly. Burt Ross in the building, man. Salute, Burt, man. Hope all is well, man. Long time. The homie Burt, man. He said Thailand, Colombia, man. Yes, sir. Man. Harvey said, yes, exactly. You must have a large stake in her business. Excellent. Yeah. And some women don't like that, man. They like, man, I want something on my own. And this nigga talking about he want to be a partner. He said, "What the fuck? We don't have anything of our own because if we marry them, then they have immediate access over." Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point, man. Yes, man. Please like, share, and subscribe, people. Please. He said it's an investment, not a donation. Exactly. That exactly. A lot of these women want donations, man. It's like you can you can donate. You could donate little money, man, but thousands of dollars is not a donation, man. But to be honest, I was on TikTok yesterday, right? Not to deviate too much, but I was on TikTok. I was, it'd be a lot of girls in Africa that be doing live streams, right? They just be putting up stupid challenges. It was one challenge: who's the prettiest girl on the stream? And like, on TikTok, you like could like just donate roses, different icons for different amounts, right? And I caught myself just kind of entertaining it a bit. I was like, let me tap this girl some roses. I just wanted just to kind of see what the play is. And some guys were donating to these girls like the equivalent of like 250, $500. Strangers. So it's not far fetched for a woman to kind of think that men can donate large amounts of money because men do. And I kind of see where they get it from. You know what I mean? Some men just for whatever reason can just give a chick a couple $1,000s and not think nothing of it. But most guys aren't like that, especially from the U.S. Harvey said, if a woman's dream is to not have a family with multiple kids, and that's a good point. Wanting to start a business is a bad sign that she wants to compete with men. That's true. That's true. That's true. And I don't know if y'all remember what I mentioned in the previous stream. This same girl says she had some resentment towards her father, and she said her mother has some resentment towards him because she felt like that people presented opportunities for him to make more money, and he declined it, and he was basically comfortable in his current job, making whatever he's making. But she was like, I wish my father would have, tried to go back to school and tried to do this. And in my head, I'm just like, why why would you have resentment towards your father? Yes, I understand that, y'all may be struggling and you don't like to see your mom, a certain way, and you feel like you believe that he can do better if he made this decision. But in the back of my mind, how it comes off, it makes me feel like that you think that you can do better than your father if you had the same education or opportunities as your father. You're basically saying, when a person's saying like you could do more, they're saying that if they were in that situation, they can be better than you. And I kind of felt like that. Not i- in a certain way. I believe that even if we use my wife at the time, she probably believed that. Excuse me. She probably believed that if she was in the U.S., she would be able to make a lot of money. She may believe that if she excuse me, if she had what I had, she would do more with the opportunities that I had. Could it be true? Maybe, maybe she would put more energy into certain things, right? Excuse me. Maybe she might put more energy into certain things, right? I'm not knocking that. But success is not based on how fast you do something or how much effort you put into something. Success is measured off of results. So while a person may be like, man, like I have a property that I've been slow on getting renovated, for example. Some people be like, man, I would have been had that property off and running, man. I would have been having it rented out. And I've been diverting my resources to other things. At the end of the day, it's easy to say what you can do if you had that opportunity. You know, I remember a guy told me, he was like, man, you interview with O'Shea, man. If it was me, man, I would have had 1 million views with that video. And I'm just like, bro, it's easy to say what you can do if you had that opportunity. But if you don't have the opportunity, you just don't know. So that's what you deal with a lot of these foreign women, is that They believe, like Harvey said, they low key compete with you. They believe that if they had the same opportunity as you, they would do better. They would do better. Um, Here's another comment. It's like they resent us for the opportunities we created for ourselves and believe they will be better off than you if only they were born. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, bro. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. He said, I'm honestly beginning to think that these foreign women really only resent us. They don't like us because they aren't like us. Bro, that's another good point. That's another good point. I don't want to get to that point where I'm convinced that they just resentful, because then it's damn near like how people feel in the black community. They feel like a lot of people come to the US from other black communities and they resent us because of the opportunity we was born into. You know what I mean? I can't help that, I was chosen to be an American, you know. He said, I feel like too many of them are disingenuous. You sound like a pronoun filtering them. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. My one of my homies be like, man, he always said, Rob, he said, Rob, you stay studying these hoes, man. Not trying to call women hoes, but he always used that statement like, man, this nigga, you be studying them hoes, man. Man, man. Dan the man was good. Oh, let's see. Let me get a couple more comments in, then I'm gonna get back to some other points, man. Her said they really believe that if they were in the US, they would be millionaires. It's crazy. More likely, they would end up in jail as a result of their self centered, envious criminal tendencies. Facts. Facts. Man, Big Mike, salute, man. He said men are the providers, women must respect this role. Exactly. They gotta respect it, man. Gotta get it through their head. He said, exactly. This explains why African and other immigrants come to the States and resent African Americans. They wish they were born in the West, even if it meant going through slavery. Yeah, man, that's the thing that I wanna that's the thing that I don't like with with foreign women is that the resentment that they carry because they wasn't born into the US. Now, some counter arguments that people will say is that because I believe that age has to do with it because like my wife at the time she was in her young 20s. She's still in her 20s now, and this Ethiopian girl that I'm cool with, she's like I said, she's 22. And so my theory is that let's just say age 30. My theory is age 30, and this is a worldwide concept, even in the US. By age 30, people start to kind of understand how skillful they are or how talented they are. When I played basketball, right? You know, I had my run when I was very good, when I was better than a lot of people, you know, got to high school, got to college. And at some point, man, this is the beauty about sports and really about men is that with sports, at some point you realize like I'm not I'm not I don't have it for the NBA. I don't have it, man. And those that play sports that really wanted to that wanted to be a professional, you've all encountered this like, the highest level of competition I've reached in basketball was walking on at a D1 university. You know, I didn't get to play. I didn't get to play, but I got to walk on. And I had issues with grades at the time when I was, when I was a freshman. And the coach said he was like, why don't you go to a D2? He like, why don't you go to our D2 or D3 schools and get your grades up, develop your skills, and then you come back to us, basically as a junior senior. And I could have did that, but at the end of the day, I said, man, my trajectory is just not the NBA. you know, it's just not the NBA. And when I got to that realization, as a man, I cried. I cried my eyes out, man. I was like, man, my dream to go to the league or possibly go to the league, I gotta let it go. And we move on. We move the fuck on, you know. But a lot of women, man, it take them a long time. Well, it take them a long time to kind of realize where you at in this world. Even people I went to high school with, everybody in high school or college, everybody think they're gonna be at a level of success. Everybody's competitive. Whether it's crab in a barrel, um, you know, I used to, sibling rivalries. But once you reach 30s, 40s, the results are in. You know, my younger brother, I love him to death. He is definitely more successful. I'm successful in my own right, but he is more successful than me on paper. You know, my younger brother. You know what I mean? And so even though we may have, even though you may have sibling rivalries or competition between friends, like once you get 40 as men, like niggas gotta concede. Like you that nigga. You that nigga, they did it in rap. Cameron he used to beef with Jay-Z a lot. Once Jay-Z became a billionaire, niggas had to shut up. Niggas had to say, Jay, you the man. So not to be getting off too much on a not to deviate too much, but the point is that a lot of women, a lot of these foreign women, it's gonna take them some time to realize like I pursued this or these different opportunities, and I accept that I just don't, whether they don't have the skill or it's just too late. It's too late for them to fulfill that opportunity. And they come to realization like, okay, I can settle with a man and be content with him taking care of him without no resentment. That's the ideal situation, but a lot of times you have to you're not going to see that unless she's an older woman. Now, I'm gonna use my brother Dre for example because he's somebody that's known in the passport community, and even I think Ronan had mentioned one of our fellow YouTubers, Fearless. His wife elevated financially. Financially, I don't know if it was education or finance, but she elevated in a certain way, which we all applauded. And Andre, he'll talk about like his wife being an accountant, and obviously she's happy that she has her own career. She had her own career, before they met, and he's helped her with her YouTube channel, and he wants to see his wife elevate. All that is cool, and he has a young wife. He has a young wife. A lot of guys have younger wives, so the counter argument will be, well, there's lots of guys that have young women that where the women are happy, and some of the men in those relationships, they quote unquote allow their woman to flourish, or they help their woman flourish. and and some will defend bringing a woman to the U.S. Why wouldn't you want to bring a woman to the U.S.? Is it something that you fear? So I had to talk to Chat GPT about this, and so I wrote, I'm thinking how guys will say passport bros are scared to allow their woman to have success at their expense, right? Because most of these women are not going to accomplish their goals on their own because they just don't have access to capital. So it's usually going to be at their man's expense. And my stance is that it's not fear of a woman having leverage, because that's what it's all about, leverage, when they move to the US or when they make more money. It's about if this is a woman I would have been with if she already fulfilled her potential. Basically, I've seen a couple women on social media that came from Africa or different parts of the world that are millionaires, that have became millionaires. Some came to the West through marriage. Some may have came through West by other to the West by other means. But yeah, I have seen some women in the West become multimillionaires. Now, you may not see that as an issue if you married a woman that has $1 million skills, right? Some men might be like, "Well, what's wrong?" They'll be like, "It's great if I met a woman and she happened to have $1 million skills." But what I think about is what type of women I typically go for in the U.S. or let's just say in the West. So it is my belief that the natural order is for a man to be with a woman that he makes more money than. So if you make $50,000 a year, you should be with a woman that makes less than you. If you make $250,000 a year, you should be with a woman that make less. That's the mindset, because most women view relationships as men should do more anyway. So it only makes sense for a man to do more when he makes more. Why would I do more and she makes 3, 4 times more than me? I can't do more. So it's an imbalance of expectations at that point. So I typically go for women that make, let's say, at or below. So that foreign woman, so these foreign women that have become millionaires, right? They would not even be my natural preference, because I'm not a millionaire, right? It wouldn't be my natural preference. So, one could make the argument that and people have made the argument that I might as well find a woman in the US, because women in the US already have the opportunities to fulfill their potential. So if they failed, at least they exhausted their option and they tried. So you don't have to worry about a woman in the US having resentment because she didn't have anything. She tried, and she has reality set in with American women at some point. Um Unfortunately, with foreign women, there's no way to gauge how successful a foreign woman would be if she had the opportunities in the US. So, and it's still gonna fall on you. Even if you brought a woman to the US and she didn't obtain, if she didn't accomplish her dreams or goals in the US, she's gonna look at you as, especially if you're successful, she's gonna look at you and say you didn't do enough to help her succeed. you know, because she's going to say, well, if you're successful and you know how to be successful, then you should be able to know how to make what I want successful too. So ChatGPT said, what you're really saying is not fear of her success. It's about fit and consistency with your original standards and preferences. Your preference is for women who remain feminine, cooperative, and don't rely on status or income for identity. And in the US, that typically correlates with women that earn less than you. So Harvey made that point too. If a woman dream is not to get married and start a family, then that's going to be, that could be looked at as a red flag. Because there are women in the world that say, my dream is to get married. My dream is to have my own family. You know, I used to mentor young men, and some men used to be like, man, my dream is in life is just to be a man. And I thought that was very, that was very deep, you know. So some people do have non-material dreams, and so I prefer a woman to be feminine. This is the thing Kevin Samuels preached on, being feminine, cooperative, and don't rely on status or income for identity. So when a woman wants to have status, because a lot of them do want to be the envy of their friends, they do want to have some type of status or income for identity. That can be a challenge, you know. And like, ChatGPT reiterated is that correlates with women. For me, that correlates with women who earn less than me. So when foreign women gain access to United States level resources, her personality, values, and behavior might shift. This is the fear guys try to say, okay, this is what you fear of. Her behavior might change, her personality might change, her values might change. I think those are legitimate concerns. And she may become a woman you never chosen to be with in the beginning or to begin with. And so this is the thing that I needed to convey more to guys that have those rebuttals, is that for me, you have to understand that a lot of times about, this is the woman I become. The woman that she became might not even be the woman who I've chosen with never who I never would have chosen to begin with. And so I'm not finna wait. I don't want to wait for her to fulfill her potential to see if this is a woman I would have chosen to be with, you know. And so I can make the argument, maybe I might have to debate Dre just to be, because I can make the argument to say, well, if Dre or Fearless, if you guys applaud and appreciate an independent woman, then why didn't y'all just get a woman in the US? There's lots of women in the US that have money, that are independent. I would argue to say will cook, will take care of home. I'm not saying those women don't exist. It's just the level of beauty. That's the only thing. The level of beauty and age. That's the only argument guys can make, really, is that they want a foreign woman because they can go younger and they can get it slightly more attractive. If that's their arguments, I could accept that. But if the argument is something else about personality and attitude, you can filter that. You can filter that. For me, with foreign women, is younger and more attractive. The attitudes and stuff like that, I can filter that in the US for the most part. I could filter that. Um, but yeah, man, would have chosen her? The real dilemma is, would I have been with her if she already achieved her full potential in a Western setting? That's why it's not about controlling her future, it's about staying consistent with your own standards. You can't always predict how a woman will evolve once she's exposed to power, freedom, and options, especially if she never had those before. So it's not about fear, it's about realism. Realism, realism. People say password bros are scared of women having leverage. That's not it. It's not about fear. It's about fit. I've seen women come to the U.S. and become millionaires, and that's cool. But those are the women I normally choose. I prefer women who don't lead with career or money. If a foreign woman reaches her full potential in the West, will she be the type of woman I would have chosen in the first place? The real question is it's not control, it's consistency. All right, let me catch up on the comments, man. So I pretty much got what I wanted to get off my chest, man. If anybody want to come up, I'll drop the link. You know what I mean? Put a one in the chat, man, if you want to come up. Let's see. I'll drop it anyway, just in case. Just in case, man. Let me see. What's the last comment? What's the last comment? All right. Harvey said, but excuse me, but younger women have been born into the information age, so they should know better. If anything, they should be able to make more opportunities available to them in their own countries. Yeah, they can earn in U.S. dollars from their third world countries, which was practically impossible 20 years ago. That's true. That is true. And being an American, I have an idea of what will work in a developing country. I have an idea because I have to think about, or we have to think about, if we lived in these countries and we couldn't get a job, we'll have to figure out how we would make money. And a lot of us have ideas on what we would do if we needed to make money in these countries. I know I have a few. He said, but yet they still choose to be running scamming games like their counterparts from 40 years ago. They have no excuses. No excuses, man. He said, I still know dudes in their 30s with who. Yeah, man, there's always a couple, man. I had a homie, man. He couldn't let it go for a while, man. Trying to ball in pro am and overseas and trying to try out for the NBA teams, trying to get a 10-day contract. Yeah, man, you right about that, man. You right about that. You gotta say, let it go, man. Let it go. He said, yes, but remember, Dre's wife come from a good family with a decent financial foundation. Yeah, facts. He said, AI. Big Mike said, Passport Bro 3.0 would be AI girlfriend. Oh, man. Oh, man. No, 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 that can't happen. He said, I think any women we get from a third world country has to come from a good family with. That's true too. That is true. That is true. That's true. That is true, man. You've been bringing up a lot of good points. At my job, at my job. So there's a Thai girl that works at my job, right? And she just started working there, and I was eavesdropping on a conversation she was having with this Indian girl. So I work in pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of Indians in pharma in the U.S. and so I typically work around a lot of diverse backgrounds. But this Thai girl, she was telling this girl, she was like, "Yeah, if a guy married me, he got to take care of like me and my parents." And she was like, and I was easy, and I was like, let me chime in. And she's like, "Do you believe?" It's like, "Do you?" She's like, "Would you do that?" And I said, "It's not my culture to do that." I was like, that's not American culture to take care of like their spouse's family." She was like, "Yeah, I know. That's why it's difficult to marry from cultures." And I was like, "Well, would you need me to take care of your parents if they had money?" And she was like, "No, of course not." She was like, "But a lot, most people, most girls may have parents that don't have money. So that just validates that guys, that women that do come from good parents, you know, it is something to consider. It is something to consider. But I could say my ex family, she came. I mean, that's one thing that attracted me to her was that her father had a successful business on a beach restaurant in Cartagena. And Cartagena gets a lot of tourism. Now they don't make, you know what I mean. Now he's successful. Her mom worked, uh, you know, a small job. But to the average Colombian, they would probably say, okay, that's a good family. That's a good family, a hardworking family that can make ends meet. Now they may not be in a situation where they are living glamorously, but I would say that she came from a successful family in a lot of ways. She didn't really have to want for anything. If she needed $1,000 from her father to help her with something, she was able to get those things. So I could look at it. I could look at it from my personal experience and say, well, even if she comes from a successful family, for me, it ended up being about. It's still going to go to your personality and the dynamic. So, her being young and not feeling like she fulfilled her potential, and you're not helping her fulfill her potential, then that relationship isn't going to be lasting because she's going to be too young. In her mind, she's too young to think about starting a family or even marriage, right? Her goal is to fulfill her potential, you know. So that's the challenge you have to evaluate, and it comes with age. Now, like I said, there's guys that marry young women, but they don't. I don't want to say have a they don't have a problem investing in their woman's dreams. I don't have a problem with investing in my woman's dreams either, but it has to be done, like I said in the beginning. I have to be the bank. I have to operate like a bank, and she has to view me as a bank, meaning that if I loan her the money, I have to live in her country. I have to have jurisdiction, meaning that if she defaults on the loan that I gave her, I can repossess the assets. That's how a bank works. That's how men should be as the bank. If I'm an investor, then I have to be a partner. It can't be a donation. So that's the difference between me and some other guys. Maybe these other guys they may donate to their woman's vision, and they don't have to be. They don't. They're not going to require being an investor. I am. I am. So it's still going to boil down to the type of man you are at the end of the day. So not saying that. So to Harvey's point. Or whose point was that about good family? So it has to benefit you. My ex wife's her family being in a good financial position, it didn't benefit me. It'll be kind of hard for me to apply it across the board. I agree with you, but it'll be hard for me to apply it to everybody because it didn't benefit me based on my personality or things like that. He said, only exception is women who are grateful for your presence and whose only dream is of getting married to someone like you. and having your children. That yeah, that was the thing. I used to say that even before I got with my ex. I used to say, you know what, my ideal woman in Colombia was a woman that would feel like it was her dream. It was her dream to meet somebody like me. Not some people might say, well, you want to feel like you got, men want to feel like they got this savior complex, or you want to feel like a king or something like that. No, it's about appreciation. Like if 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 she if she if she gets what she wants and I get what she wants, then what's the argument or debate? I'm not forcing a woman to say that a foreign man to take care of her is her dream. That's coming out of her mouth. That's not being forced on. That's coming out of her mouth. Um, some women used to say, guys be exploiting women from different countries. Like, if they not getting money from us, who they gonna get money from? You know, we not gonna donate. We're not gonna donate. That don't make sense. Women don't donate sex in the U.S., do they? They don't donate sex. They require something in exchange for that. He said Phil's wife has a master's in psychology. Okay, okay. So she elevated her education, man, which is a good thing. Make sure if you bring her to the state, she doesn't have family here. Yeah, yeah. A lot of situations, if a woman doesn't really know people in the U.S., she's gonna be very scared to relocate to the U.S. Cause it's a whole nother country. It's a whole nother country. Not knowing nobody. Yeah, being taken care of sounds cool, but if there's no presence of your culture or connection, like especially for women, it's gonna be very difficult. So it's a double edged sword. Some women don't give a fuck about their family. They like I'm trying to leave. Like I'm good. You know. So it just depends on the woman too. Harry said, I have to admit, I'm already searching in small towns. Foreign women that I come across are too greedy, desperate, and resentful. Yeah, that's a key word, man. To harp on resentful, man. That is something we don't talk about enough, about the resentment foreign women have towards men that are born into countries to the West. There's worldwide resentment, man. He said, "I know a guy who brought his Brazilian wife to the states after 3 years of marriage. She got her U.S. citizenship and left him. She had family and she moved in. Yeah, man. I guys personally similar situation, man. Once they get them papers, what in Houston say they chucking the deuces, man. They chucking the deuces, man. Once they get them papers, man." He said, "Non-material dreams, yeah, bingo. You hit it on the nail. Yeah, exactly." Let's see. What's good, Gil, aka MMA Fan 3? No excuses, Big Mike, Ron, and Bert. Harvey, salute, man. Salute to you, man. Salute to you, man. Hope all is well. He said they have too many opportunities in their third world countries. If anything, they should be helping us expand our opportunities in their countries, not the other way around. Exactly. Exactly. Not the other way around. And sometimes I ask myself, and maybe you guys could in the chat, if you was born in some of these developing countries, knowing what you know as a U.S. citizen, like what type of path would you take to pull yourself, I guess, to give yourself a comfortable life in that country? I think about this all the time. I think about this all the time. What would I do if I was born in that situation? Well, I know for myself, me know what I know now is like if I have the skills to be an athlete, I would have I could have there when I went to a couple of schools during undergrad because I transferred a lot. But after basketball, after basketball, after my basketball stint as a freshman, I just decided to run track. I decided the track option because track was something I did in high school. So I got a full ride scholarship on track, and a lot of guys on the track team was from like different parts of Africa. We had like a distance guy from like Kenya, had some guys from Jamaica, had some guys from couple from Ethiopia. So now you're seeing in basketball, you're seeing people from we've seen people from from Dominican Republic, Africa play basketball, baseball, etc. Right. So if I was born in a third world country, I definitely would have developed skills in some sport to get an athletic scholarship. Like that's like in my opinion, that's like the easiest thing because I went to a D1. I went to a D1. It wasn't like a top D1 school. So the talent that we were getting from other countries, it wasn't like they were talented enough to get a scholarship, but it wasn't like they had Olympic talent. So my point is that it's easy to get an athletic scholarship if you if you okay, especially like sports like track and field or anything. So I would have took the sports option first. That would have been my first option, and then two, seeing what foreigners do in the U.S., I would have definitely been strong in math and sciences because a lot of foreigners, you see them in PhD programs in the U.S. Um, there's other things, I would have got into investment banking in a foreign country because those people make a lot of money in investment banking. So there are different lanes you could take if you were born in a third world country. The question is always going to be, well, you need initial capital to start. You need access to the West. So my access to the West would have either been sports. Maybe I would have finessed the chick. Maybe I would have tried to finesse a chick. So that's a legitimate play. Finesse a chick in the West to get something. But it's still very difficult. Or going to politics. Or going to politics. You can definitely um become more visible and create opportunity yourself if you became in politics. So those are things I would have looked at um if I was born in a third world country. However, said Chinese are in Ethiopia making a lot of money. That's true. Why can't she speak to the government officials over there and ask them to invite you to bring your expertise to modernize the country? That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, that's a very deep point because you know it goes both ways. You reach out. Sometimes you have to reach out to those countries and kind of convince certain people that hey, you need some advisors, some consultants to kind of help you know with them things. But a lot of African mindset is it's not about who brings ideas or structure. It's about who's bringing immediate money. That's the African mindset. But yeah, that thinking is small. Yeah, so what country do you think is best for Black American man? It just depends on the type of Black American man you are. So we've been having these conversations a lot, and one of the things we pointed out was that personality type. dictates what country is best for you. Latin American countries, which are typically westernized like the United States, with some added benefits, it suits some men. It suits some men, that know how to navigate um feminism, that know how to navigate liberalism. There's certain men that know how to navigate that. I'm not a man that can navigate that, nor is interested in navigating that. So I'm in more of male dominant societies, socially, politically, and culturally, which would be a lot of African countries. There are Asian countries or and Eastern European countries that are dominant, where men are more dominant as well. But it just depends on you. You know what I mean? So that's why a lot of guys, there are guys that do consultations. I think, there are certain guys, not all, but you need somebody that where you can speak to and you can say, well, this is my personality, this is what I'm looking for, this is the type of man that I am. And then a person can better cater that answer. But I think in general, I think that the one size fit all countries are going to be more in Africa and maybe some parts of Asia, maybe some parts of Eastern European. So I prefer black women. So it'd be Africa for me. But if you open to dating black women, I mean white women or Asian women or anything in between, then there's countries that I think is a one size fit all, and I think is more patriarchal countries. Harvey said, I met a white Colombian woman who was obsessed with her Italian heritage. I felt like she had an inferiority complex, and I feel like a lot of foreign women have this. Think of Cubans in Florida. Okay. Inferiority complex. Okay, I'm gonna have to chew on that for a minute. Let's see. So the only thing I'm noticing in the South and small towns is that they're a little too status driven. Luxury cars, job titles, being an athlete is still a huge thing for quite a lot. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I like luxury cars, but I like it in a sense of if I get something for myself, it's not to impress nobody or it's not to compete, you know. Um Big Mike, they don't even have to have family in the States. Once they're connected with an established community from their home country, she's packing her stuff. It happens, man. He said Afro Latina versus African woman. I probably did a lot of conversations on that, man. But hold on for a second. I'll kind of get back to that. So I'm gonna pin this. I'm gonna pin this comment. He said, Harvey said, I would act as a bridge between the government agencies and Black American expertise in sports industries and government. That's why, I mean, we supposed to have a seat at the African Union. The African Union was supposed to be our way to kind of have these conversations. Contracts are lucrative and can be easily obtained from third world governments if you have the right expertise. They will pay you. They do this in some African countries. Yeah, it's happening though. I have people I know that have construction companies and they travel to Africa and they're looking for potential deals. It is happening. It just doesn't get reported. It's just not something that gets reported on. There's a lot of things that are happening in the works. Um, for some reason, I noticed the travel space is that we get information on marriages, businesses, a lot of great things um guys are doing in Latin America. We get feedback on that, but we don't really get the feedback from like like African countries. 'Cause there's a lot of guys that are married to African women, West African, East African. There's a lot of guys that are married. There's a lot of guys that have businesses and doing things, but for some reason, that information just doesn't come into the space. But I will attest that a lot of these things are going on. He said, "Don't bring them back. Move to their country, man." That is passport bros. 101 rule number one, man. That is rule number one. Don't bring them back to the states, man. You know, rules. Oh, I thought I dropped the link, man. God damn. My bad if anybody wanted to come up. I thought I pressed send for the link. But he said Afro Latinas, man, versus African women, man. Well, it's a complex question because when you say Afro Latinas, right? There's a segment of guys that will say an Afro Latina is dark skin, and some will say Afro Latina is a woman that has a drop of a drop of African blood. So we can't even get to that until we kind of define what we would call Afro Latina. Because some guys will just say, okay, like I use Brazil. Some guys will say, well, a lot of these part well, I can say pardos, but a lot of these women, if you did an ancestry DNA test on them, they may be 25% African, um, 25% indigenous, 50% European. And some guys might be like, well, she's 25% Afro blood, so she's Afro Latina. She has curly hair. She's Afro Latina. So it just depends on that's the first thing. But I use my definition on Afro Latina. Okay, he said dark skin. So the first difference is between Afro Latinas versus African women is that African women look better overall. If we want to talk about just pure dark skinned women, African women have curvier bodies. There's more of them than them, and it's just too much beauty. I mean, you got Rwanda. Rwanda was shut down. Black Brazilians, black Colombians, they will shut them down. Like they will shut them down by themselves, just Rwandans. So, whew, mm-mm-mm. So looks wise, and there's some bad, there's some very attractive Afro Latinas too. I'm just saying, as far as the numbers, Africa just got the numbers. So I would just say Africa when it comes to that. Um, Black women in Latin America are no different than black women in the U.S. when it comes to their attitudes and their feminist mindsets. It is probably worse in a lot of ways. A lot of people take a lot of even in South Africa, a lot of countries that have feminist movements, they take a more extreme posture on feminism than they do in the United States. So you might meet some women, some black women in Latin America. You might be like, damn, she worse than Keisha. She worse than Vivica Fox. You might be like, God damn. Like, you know what I mean? So some of them take it on a more extreme level too. I will say this: the main differences is that just gonna talk about the pros. So the thing I like about Afro Latinas is that they typically know how to cook, like to cook, and they present they present food in a very nice way. You know what I mean? Every Most women I've met in Latin America, like, I always thought it was cute when a woman makes when she plates rice on a plate, they may put it in a bowl or a cup to like make it have that, round shape. And they may cut some avocados and decorate it a certain way. So I appreciate that about the Latinas. Like their, presentation is always good, details is good. Um, a lot of them typically carry themselves like ladies. The Latinas, the mannerisms, they cross their legs. They they know how to they wear makeup well. Dental hygiene is on point. So there's a lot of things when it comes to details I appreciate about the Latinas, but on the dark side of Latinas, you're gonna get a feisty, combative, emotional roller coaster type chick. Some would even say bipolar. You know, African women in general haven't mastered the skill of cooking for a lot of reasons. Um, they may have grew up without having house help. They may have grew up with house help, so they didn't do a lot of the cooking. And one of my guys, Tony, broke it down to me. He said Africans would they look at food as just something to eat. It ain't supposed to be pretty. It ain't supposed to be like coming. It's not supposed to have like a chef approach. It's just supposed to be about filling your belly, And so, and I'm not trying to generalize Africa, but a lot of things is just like throwing it in a pot, cooking it, and eating it, putting stuff together. So, so when it comes to like even cooking, like a lot of them, like I said, either they haven't mastered the art of cooking, and some don't desire to cook. You really see women that'll offer to cook or even feel comfortable in cooking. And then two, if they do make something, the presentation of the plate it doesn't look appealing. Like you know what I mean. A lot of times you may see a lot of mush, a lot of liquids just mushed around, and so it's just like, man, I miss my Latinas, man. I miss pretty plates. So, but with African women, you're gonna get a more calmer, docile woman. Um, you're going to get a woman that she's gonna even though you might have to teach her more things, she's open to learning, and yeah, she's open to learning, and she's moldable. She's very moldable. Latinas are very hard to mold, but African women are more moldable. Um, I think the positives, even though they may not be more as detailed with certain things, they're more cooperative when it comes to a lot of things, and you can build them up if you don't mind doing that. So there's a lot of other caveats as well, but those are kind of the things I could kind of just think of off the top of my head. Let's see. He said, although it depends on the country as well, Afro Colombians appear to prefer black men versus Afro Brazilians. Afro Brazilians appear to suffer more from Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, that's true. He said, Afro Latinas DNA come from West Africa. The Rwandans and Kenyans and Ugandan women are from East Africa. They are more curvy. Yeah, that's another thing too. I noticed about these countries is like, I think the misconception about the continent of Africa is that all black women got fat asses or are thick. Like there are some regions of Africa where women are slender. You're not gonna see just majority big booty women. Um, Ethiopia is a country where women are not gonna be voluptuous. That's just not Ethiopians. You know what I mean? They're gonna be more slender. You might get lucky and catch a chick with, just a crazy thigh, hips, and, you know, a fatty butt. That's not Ethiopian culture. But if you go to Rwanda, you're gonna see all that. You go to some Central Africa countries, they're gonna be more slender. So a lot of the genetics, to y'all point, a lot of the genetics that we see in the former enslaved, colonies that have enslaved people, they may have gotten Africans that weren't curvy like that. It depends on where they got them from. He said Afro Latinos have that West African genetics, so many of them will look like Black American. You might, it's kind of hard to say. Might see prettier faces because, let's see, let's see. He said African women are too spoiled. Rwandan women appear to have more character and are a bit more genuine. It seems. Yeah, some of them are. I don't know how African women got spoiled though. I had put this on a status because when it comes to money, a lot of African women, their argument would be, well, African men spoil their women. They'll say African men do this. So I said, well, if African men spoil and take care of their women, then why are all y'all trying to get jobs? Why do all y'all say y'all gotta have your own money? you know, it's a old argument, man, but it's just funny because they'll say one thing, but then it's like if y'all spoiled, then why do y'all have to work or want to work? Yeah, Senegalese and Ethiopian food is okay. Yeah, Ethiopian food is okay. I actually want to do a stream on my other channel talking about food because it was a clip on TikTok that went viral, and this black lady went in. She was saying that she was trying to say that people say African, but I think she was talking about West Africa. She was just saying like the food isn't all that, but but that's a different conversation. Yeah, so I guess you're saying East Africa, you get the best bang for your buck. Yeah, I like East Africa, but I think I'm a little biased because East Africa has better weather. So I can't say what West Africa has to offer because West Africa is just more is hot, and I haven't explored West Africa like I did East Africa. So I know there's some gems in West Africa. Then you got to deal with more. You got to deal with more languages in West Africa. You got to deal with French. Some areas maybe Portuguese, Arabic, depending on. So it's just more. West Africa is just more challenging to explore. He said docile isn't always good, and to be honest, a lot of West African women to appear to be moldable and cooperative, but once they get their claws in, I think most of it turns out to be an act. Yeah, I could see. I could. Yeah. Once if they get out, that yeah, that's the thing. We talked about this too. That's the thing. Like once they get out, once they get to the West, man, that's when everybody show their true colors. Even African men in the UK, I done seen TikTok say, "Man, don't bring your African woman from home to the UK." you know, you know. That's why. That's why I said before that you don't want. There's different mechanisms to control a woman, and I said that you do not want to control a woman through money. You want a woman to be controlled by her religion. That's the only thing. That's the safest form of control you can have in your relationship. Senegalese, okay. Yeah, I heard Senegal was cool. Let's see. They will they will do anything to get what they want and are very deceitful and manipulative. Yep. Those are facts, man. See these guys know. Harvey said, "Don't trust African women, Muslim, African women can be bipolar also. Man, yeah, I haven't experienced the bipolarness yet. I haven't experienced it yet, man. Yeah, you only could. I feel like you only could trust certain people as far as you can see them. Yeah, I said I live in Philly, and I had an Ethiopian stripper. She was super thick, and the best box I had. Salute, man. I'm in Philly too, man. You know what's crazy about being in a first world country? And I like to recognize guys that said this, but I can't think of his name right now. But we had a conversation about when women have access to like certain diet or beauty products, anything, they can enhance their beauty. So I've noticed a lot of us has noticed that Ethiopian women in particular, you tend to see the more attractive ones outside of Ethiopia. Like you see them in the U.S. looking good, thick, curvy, but you don't see them in the continent. You don't see them in their country like that. I should be like, man, is it the U.S. diet? Like, are they thicker because of the U.S. diet, or I don't know what it is, but um, yeah, Ethiopians do look better in the U.S. than I've seen it in the country. I will say that. No, no intel on Djibouti, man. My guy Jay Focus, we was talking about Djibouti visiting, but by being very militarized in a small country, anywhere where there's too many military dudes, and they got a lot of military bases from the U.S., China, and everywhere in between. Like a lot of them girls probably get ran through, man. You'll be trying to find a diamond in the rough in Djibouti, man. Cause them niggas live on bases. They making American salary. They all using the same dating apps. They just they more connected, man. I wouldn't even want to put myself in the position of being with a chick in Djibouti. Djibouti, it's just too yeah. It's just not ideal. It wouldn't be ideal for me. Let's see. Looks like Harvey had a bad experience with a foreign. Oh man, I know, right? Here, I put one of the worst. Please do not take African Muslim out their Muslim environment. They will lose their mind. Yeah, Somali women, they fine though. Somali women are so fine. He said it's both diet and environment. He said that's why even East African women look better than West African women. All environment, food variety is better. Yeah, man, it's a lot of y'all got a lot of diverse opinions, man. Many even run away from their families, man. But yeah, man, I dropped the link, man. I don't think nobody plans on coming up, man. But yeah, the basic of the stream, man, was we're just saying men are the bank. Foreign women need to understand this. And the premise behind it is that foreign women tend to look at passport bros as men as donators and not as banks. And I appreciate y'all mentioning the word donate in the stream. They look at us as sponsors or donators or sugar daddies. Um, that's how they inherently look at us. Um, but we need to help them understand that we are the bank, and passport bros need to understand that we are the bank and know what the bank and know what that means. And just to recap, a bank lends money to someone in a situation where if that person defaulted on their loan, they can repossess the assets. You can't repossess the assets if it's long distance. So the point is that women have to understand that if y'all in a long distance situation, she has to understand that she can't ask you for a loan because you're in a different jurisdiction. She has to understand that and be cool with that. Be like, okay, I understand you're looking at this as a bit from a business perspective. They have to understand that. They might not accept it, but they have to understand that. And so you have to ask yourself, I'm talking to Patrick, but you have to ask yourself is long distance, any type of long distance is going to work because she may not like the fact that you are operating like a bank. The other thing the bank does is you can be an investor, which means that you're going to be a partnership. We're going to be 50-50 partners if I invest in this business. I want 50% revenue if I invest in this business. So it depends on the type of business if you need to be on the ground or if you can be partners long distance away. But basically, you're either an investor or a lender as the bank. We don't donate. We should not be donating. It sets a bad precedent. We should not be donating to a business, even if it's a woman, wife, or whatever. We have to we have to operate like a bank. That's the takeaway I want guys to kind of have to think about.